Roth conversions can be an amazing tool to build tax-free wealth in retirement for both you and your family and heirs. However, there are many ways to go about them the wrong way, and just as many opportunities to make mistakes along the way, causing you more tax or other issues that you weren't expecting. In this video, we're going to cover 3 of the most common issues and mistakes retirees make when making Roth conversions so you can go about doing them the right way. Let's dive in. The first common Roth conversion mistake that we're going to cover in this video involves the tax bill that we all know you're going to have from making a Roth conversion. All of you who are familiar with the Roth conversion strategy understand that the whole point of doing a Roth conversion is we're choosing to move money from our pre-tax retirement accounts to a Roth IRA, and in doing so, we're choosing to pay taxes on that amount today in the current tax year. So obviously, we have a tax bill that we're going to have to pay, and there is where the common mistake lies. When you go about doing a Roth conversion, you have a choice to make in regards to paying that tax bill. You can choose to have the taxes withheld from your conversion, or you can choose to pay the tax bill separately to the U.S. Treasury, just like you might pay estimated quarterly taxes or other tax bills. Retirees often are used to paying their taxes by having withholding from their various income sources. You might have taxes withheld from your Social Security or your pension or your IRA withdrawals or some of your other retirement incomes. It makes it easy, it's simple, you don't have to write checks, tax withholding from our income, and we've been doing that our whole life from our paychecks, so why not continue to do that in retirement? And it makes a lot of sense. But that's why making this mistake is so easy. Many retirees choose to follow that pattern, and when they make a Roth conversion, they choose to have the federal tax withheld from the converted amount. It's what they do with everything else. Why not continue to do it? And what we're going to pause on and talk about here is why having that tax withheld is probably not the best idea, and paying the tax separately might be the best way to go. Let's go ahead and draw out that concept to make it easy for you to understand. Let's do a really simple example here of a $50,000 Roth conversion to illustrate the 2 different ways we can pay the tax and why you may want to consider paying the tax directly. We're going to look at both scenarios here. So we're doing a $50,000 Roth conversion. To keep it really easy, let's assume 20% tax, which means our tax bill is going to be $10,000. Nice, easy, and simple. The first scenario we're going to look at here is our Roth conversion, but we're paying the tax bill from the conversion. So we are going to start with our $50,000 that we're moving from our pre-tax IRA to our Roth IRA. Our money's going to go in 2 ways. We are going to pay our $10,000 in tax directly to the U.S. Treasury. And we're going to have then what's left, our $40,000, is going to go to our Roth. So we're going to have a $10,000 tax bill regardless of whether we pay the tax directly or have it come right from the conversion. In this scenario, we end up with $40,000 in our Roth, and our tax bill is paid out of the $50,000 that we're converting. One way you could do it. As opposed to that, we can do it in the way that we feel most often is best, where again, we're starting with our $50,000 Roth conversion. We want every single dime of that to go into our Roth. So as opposed to $40,000, we're getting $50,000 in there, a little more juice to tax-free wealth building plan to get started. And then separately, again, the same tax bill, we're going to write a check to the U.S. Treasury. Again, speak with your CPA about the best way to do this and how it impacts your tax for the year and whether or not you should make estimated payments or a separate estimated payment or wait until you're filing your return. But at the end of the day, we pay the same amount in tax, but in the second scenario here, we have $10,000 more going into our Roth, which is likely the ideal outcome. We want more money to start out from day one to grow tax-free for as long as possible. So that's why we typically recommend this strategy here to pay taxes, even though it kind of goes against the logic of having tax withheld from our other retirement incomes, Social Security, IRA withdrawals, pensions. This is the more common way to do it for the rest of our kind of retirement income, but this way makes the most sense for Roth conversions and allows you to build tax-free wealth faster. All right, so we talked about the two ways that you can have tax paid on your Roth conversion and why paying the tax directly rather than having the tax withheld from your converted amount might be the better option for you. Again, remember, that's a personalized decision, really up to you. We tend to believe that paying it directly is a better option for most people in most circumstances. So we're going to move on to our second common mistake, and this one happens after the conversion is complete. And what we're talking about here is how we are investing the funds that you transfer over to your Roth once they're settled into your account. And now we have investment decisions to make. We just moved money from pre-tax to Roth. Now we get to decide, what are we going to do with it? And the common mistake here is that a lot of retirees tend to invest their new Roth money that they just converted just like it was invested before when it was in their IRA, or invest in a strategy that doesn't align with their purpose for doing the Roth conversion in the first place. We have to keep in mind that we're only choosing to do this. We're only choosing to pay taxes today and move from pre-tax to Roth for a really specific reason. For some folks, that reason might be that we're in a low tax bracket right now. We want lower required distributions in the future when we're in a higher bracket. So we want to expedite some of our tax bill. And that's a great reason. Other folks say, well, I want to start building tax-free wealth for myself over time in my Roth. Another great reason. Some folks might say, I want to start building a tax-free pot of wealth in my Roth for myself and for my heirs to inherit. You know, a nice inheritance for them where the tax bill is significantly lower potentially. All those reasons are great, but it's important for you to identify which of those is your main goal and purpose for doing this, and make sure that once that money's in your Roth, you invest towards that goal. Meaning, if long-term tax-free wealth building in our Roth is our main goal, we need to make sure that the money's invested in a way that offers us the best opportunity to get long-term tax-free wealth. So the common mistake here is to have our Roth investment strategy look like our IRA investment strategy, or our joint investment account investment strategy, or look like our whole household investment strategy. Maybe it's 60-40 or 70-30, and we're just going to invest our Roth just like it was before, according to how we have, you know, all of our household investments aligned. Or we might not have a strategy at all, and we just kind of do something random, which is even worse. Having some kind of strategy is better than nothing. So I'm going to show you an example here to kind of simplify this mistake for you, so you can make sure that, you know, you're going through the effort and the energy and paying the tax bill. We want to make sure that the money is invested in a way that is moving us closer to our long-term goal for doing the Roth in the first place. So let's look at an example here. Let's use a really simple example here to show why we need to think about the investment strategy after the Roth conversion is made. We have our Roth that now has our converted amount in it, and we want to make sure that that account is invested appropriately, the way in alignment with the reason we're doing this in the first place, which may be different in our overall household investment strategy. So let's look at that in a really simple example. Let's assume we have a $1 million IRA, pre-tax IRA. And right now, today, that is invested like a typical retiree may be, 60% in stocks and 40% in bonds. So our pie chart of that might look something like this, with 60% in stock and 40% in bonds. Again, just keeping it really simple. So we're 40-60 with our $1 million IRA, and we're doing, just like our last example, we're doing a $50,000 Roth conversion. So we're going to end up with $50,000 in our Roth IRA. So on the other side here, we now have make sure I'm giving myself enough room, a $50,000 Roth. And we need to figure out how do we invest that $50,000 Roth. We have a completely blank slate. We just moved $50,000 over. So now our $1 million IRA has $950 and our Roth has $50,000. So some of the mistakes we see people make is they see their IRA being 60-40 and they invest their Roth 60-40, just the same. That's our household investment strategy. We might as well do that with our Roth. May not be a long-term problem, but it might not help us maximize the Roth in the long term and have a payoff for the tax bill we just paid. If you remember, $10,000 that we paid. And we have to keep in mind the long-term goal for this, which for most of our clients anyway, and I imagine many retirees who are doing Roth conversions, the long-term goal is to leverage the tax-free growth opportunity that the Roth provides to build a bigger nest egg of tax-free money for ourselves or for our kids, for our other heirs. So we should think about that goal. And let's say that's the case here. This couple is doing this Roth conversion to build tax-free wealth. If we assume that stocks, and it doesn't matter what form, ETFs, mutual funds, individual stocks, doesn't matter. Stocks are the best opportunity we have to build tax-free wealth over the long term. We might say, again, this isn't investment advice, this is just a simple way this could work. We might say, hey, this Roth money is really for us in 20 plus years or for our kids in 30 plus years. So what if we made this account really aggressive? What if we did 100% stock? Really different, meaningfully different than our household investment strategy, where we've gone way down the aggressive end of the spectrum for good reason. And maybe the right number for you is 80% or 70% or 95%. It really doesn't matter. So we're taking more risk here for more upside potential because it makes sense. It's our goal. What we can do is come back over here and say, hey, we have shifted this $50,000 to be more aggressive. We can, if we feel like we have to, make a move where we shift our stocks over here down accordingly to make up for it. So we keep our household investment strategy at 60-40, but now it's spread across two different accounts and we have our risk and upside potential higher in the account that makes the most tax sense. So maybe we move this to 55-45 or 50-50, depending on how much we're doing over here. That way we are keeping our overall household investment strategy in alignment, which is important, but we're taking advantage and leveraging the tax-free wealth building power of the Roth IRA. So this simple example really shows us why it's important to not simply follow along with what we've been doing or invest our Roth randomly, or invest our Roth too conservatively. We want to make sure that we're making the best of it. And remember, we're paying a tax bill to do this. We at least have to have the growth potential to make that back. And obviously, we want to do better than that down the road. So it's important to avoid the mistake of investing our new Roth or our converted amount in our Roth the same way we've been investing the rest of our household money. So we talked about the tax consequences of our Roth conversion and the best way to handle the tax bill. We talked about investing our Roth after the conversion and how important it is to make sure that our investment strategy is aligned with the reason that we're doing the Roth conversions in the first place, to really make sure that we're going through all of this effort and energy and calculating and tax paying and make sure it's going to pay off at the end of the day. That's the important piece of that. In our third and final mistake that we're going to highlight here when it comes to retirees making Roth conversions is so we talked about the two ways you could choose to pay your tax bill and why one is better than the other. We also talked about investing your Roth once the conversion is complete and making sure that your investment strategy in the Roth aligns with your purpose and long-term goals for making Roth conversions in the first place, so you can actually be happy with your results at the end of the day. The third and final mistake we're going to cover in this video is likely the most common and certainly the most important. Just like you plan, hopefully, for your retirement years in advance, make sure you understand your income, your expenses, how you're going to fund your lifestyle, and prepare for that with a long runway. You should do the same for making Roth conversions. A really common mistake is that retirees make Roth conversions kind of spur the moment. When they realize they're in an opportune tax situation to do it, or they see a social media video or post about Roth conversions, think it's a great idea, and start going ahead and implementing it without taking the time, effort, and energy to plan ahead. So we encourage our clients and the folks that we talk to and work with to have their Roth conversion strategy pretty much figured out a year, 2 years, 3 years, or longer. And there may be good reason to have a longer period of time to prep and plan for our Roth conversions. We want to have a nice long time. We don't want to be making Roth conversion decisions right before the end of the year. We don't want to be making them without really planning ahead to make sure that we are avoiding all of the common mistakes and we're not going to kick ourselves in the next year or in future years. So there are two really important reasons beyond the obvious of why planning ahead, and by ahead I mean years in advance, before making Roth conversions can really pay off and help you truly benefit from the whole strategy in the first place. Let's take a look at those and have a couple examples for you to make sure that you fully understand. So the mistake we're talking about here is not giving ourselves enough of a runway of time to prepare properly to make Roth conversions. Roth conversions have tax consequences from paying the actual tax on the conversion to possibly causing our Medicare premiums to be higher, more tax on our Social Security benefits, and a myriad of other things. So we need to have enough time to prepare for that and decide if those costs and extra taxes are right and it makes sense. But what we're focused on here is giving enough time for two specific reasons. Enough of a planning runway to, number one, build up enough cash to pay the tax bills for our Roth conversions. We talked earlier that usually the best way to pay the tax on our conversions is to write checks. So we need to make sure that we have enough cash to write the checks, or we can't operate that way. So let's use an example here to talk about when that's really important, because a lot of people don't really have to worry about that, but depending on the size and length of time, how many years you're doing conversions, you might need to plan ahead of time. So let's say here that we are going to be doing 5 years worth of conversions. We're going to do conversions over 5 years. Let's use the example that we've been using here of a $50,000 Roth conversion each year. We looked at and we planned ahead of time our column of income each year. And let's say this is the split between our tax bracket. We have a high tax bracket and we have a low tax bracket. And right now, our other incomes are filling up this much of that tax bracket. So we have this much room in here. And let's say that's $50,000 worth of room before we jump into the next bracket. So we're going to do a $50,000 Roth conversion to fill that. Nice, simple, easy. And we're going to do that for 5 years for various reasons. They don't really matter for this example. So we're going to use that same 20% tax rate on our Roth conversion. So 20% on our 50,000 each year is 10,000 in tax over 5 years. That means over that time period, we're going to pay 50,000 in tax, just federal tax on our Roth conversion. So if we don't plan ahead and we don't have $10,000 a year or $50,000 over those 5 years, we might have a problem. We might not be able to do as much of conversions. We might have to withhold the tax from our conversions, which we learned is not really what we want to do. So having enough lead time and thinking ahead of time of, how much space am I going to have after I retire and for how many years? Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 7? So we can get an idea of what this tax bill is going to be like years in advance before we ever have to write a check, and we can change our saving strategy and adjust accordingly to save up enough cash to write the checks we're going to need to write. If we're not looking ahead and we're not understanding what the yearly and total tax bill is, we might find that we can't really maximize the Roth conversion strategy that we have in our mind if we wait too long and we don't plan ahead simply to have the cash to write the checks to the U.S. Treasury. So point number one, why having enough of a lead time and planning time frame is really important to get these done the right way. Point number two, aside from building up enough cash to pay for paying the taxes, we also want to make sure, if we have a set number of years here to really maximize this strategy, we want to do our best to make the most of it. Let's use this example here and say, this income that's filling up the bottom of this bracket is, it could be in some part Social Security, it could be interest and dividends, and it might be capital gains, could be a pension, could be a bunch of things in there. But for each of these sources of income, we are having less and less room to do this Roth conversion. Again, if we made a $10,000 withdrawal from our IRA this year too, that might fill up that much of our space because we're pulling from our IRA, and now we can only do a $40,000 Roth conversion, and so on and so forth. So what this means is we need to be careful in this time period of 5 years to make sure that we're planning ahead and we understand how much income am I going to need to live my lifestyle. Our Roth conversion strategy should never infringe upon our ability to do the things we want to do. And what's the best way to get that income we need and fill up as little of this bracket as possible? So we might make decisions like, hey, let's defer our Social Security for 5 years so that isn't filling up this bracket. Let's not pull from our IRA right now while we're doing Roth conversions. Let's invest in investments that aren't pushing out taxable income, interest, dividends, capital gains. And there could be a whole bunch of other ways that you minimize the income that's filling up this bracket so you can do during this time period of maybe potentially limited number of years to do this, for it to make sense and maximize this number. That's the important part here. Again, that's really hard to do if you're going year by year and not planning ahead. It's much better to do that years in advance before we're actually doing the Roth conversions, so you know exactly how much income you need, where it's coming from, how much space you're going to have, so you can do the right Roth conversions for the right amount of years and have the money you need to pay the tax. That's how a successful Roth conversion strategy works, and you need time to figure it out, calculate, and make sure everything is in place for it to go smoothly and successfully. All right, there we have it. The 3 most common mistakes retirees make when doing Roth conversions. Let's do a quick review and make them actionable so you can move ahead in deciding if Roth conversions are right for you and your family. First, we have mistake number 1, which is in regards to how we pay our tax bill. We talked about the 2 options we have. We can have it withheld from our conversion, or we can pay the bill directly to the U.S. Treasury. We talked about why it makes more sense to pay the bill directly to the Treasury so that our total Roth conversion goes into our Roth IRA and can be invested to grow tax-free in the future, rather than having our taxes come out of that amount. For most people, that makes the most sense long term. Mistake number 2, making sure that our Roth investment strategy is aligned with our goals for doing Roth conversions in the first place. The common mistake is that we revert back and invest our Roth just like that money was invested in our pre-tax IRA, even though those 2 accounts have completely different tax rules, maybe completely different goals. So we want to think about and allow ourselves to have a totally different investment strategy for our Roth IRA, considering its main value is tax-free growth over the long term. And if our goal is to build tax-free wealth through our Roth, we should make sure we're investing it towards that goal specifically, even if that deviates a bit from our overall household investment strategy. Finally, mistake number 3, the most important, the most common, is giving ourselves enough time to plan out our Roth conversions so we don't make big mistakes, we don't have regrets, and we actually execute this plan in a way that pays off for us and our family in the future. There's really 2 important aspects of this. The first we just talked about is making sure we have enough cash to pay the tax bill in the way that it's smartest, which is writing a check to the U.S. Treasury. If we're doing small Roth conversions over 1 year or 2 years, it may not be that big of a deal. But if we're doing bigger Roth conversions that are going to have larger tax bills for a longer period of time, we want to make sure that we're saving up and have enough cash on hand to write checks and pay those bills. Otherwise, we might be put into a corner and forced to have the taxes paid from our conversion, which we learned is not the best way to do it. The second part of that mistake is making sure that we have enough space in our current low tax bracket to do as much Roth conversion as we possibly can. Again, if your personal strategy and reason for doing Roth conversions is, hey, I'm in a relatively low tax bracket that's only going to last for a certain amount of time, I need to fill this tax bracket with Roth conversions. If that's you and that's your motivation, great, good for you. But we want to make sure, and this takes time to do it, that we're creating enough space in that tax bracket, which means we might need to rearrange for a number of years how we get our income. Maybe instead of pulling money from our IRAs and causing more tax, we pull money from cash. Maybe we use our after-tax investments. Maybe we don't start Social Security yet, or just one of us starts Social Security. That way we're not piling on more taxable income, filling our tax bracket, and preventing ourselves from doing the most Roth conversions we can possibly do during the time frame we have to do them. Again, that takes time, it takes advanced planning, it might take some tax help from your financial planner, your CPA, hopefully both, so that you can execute the best strategy for you and your family. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn about Roth conversions and make sure you're doing them in the best way possible. Stay tuned for our next video.